So we're beginning now hypothesis tests. This is kind of the big deal in statistics. We've really arrived at this point. This is the major deal in statistics is hypothesis tests. And so this is the beginning of this is what chapter 9 is all about. Pretty much after this, the rest of the course is more, you know, we've done the two big things, one of them being confidence intervals. That was chapter 8. Chapter 8 was all about confidence intervals. And now chapter 9 is all about hypothesis tests. And after we finish, and that's what this exam number 3 is going to cover, confidence intervals and a hypothesis test. And then the rest of the course will be more and more complex and different types of hypothesis tests and confidence intervals. These two things are really the heartbeat of statistics, hypothesis tests and confidence intervals. They are the central piece of statistics. They are what we do. And so to begin with, I want to give you the idea of what we're doing. I want to show you what it is we're doing. So why we even have such a thing as hypothesis. And I showed you confidence intervals before, right? And I played the game like guess my number. You know, a confidence interval is an interval in which we're confident something exists. Like if you wanted to estimate the population, the percentage that are going to vote for a certain candidate in the election coming up, right? You would form a confidence interval. You'd be 99% confident that between 48% and 52% of the population is going to vote, whatever. That's a confidence interval. But now let me reason with you in general about a hypothesis test. What is a hypothesis test? Why do we even do it? Before we get into the details, I want to give you the big picture. So think with me for a second. What if, suppose, there's a new treatment, for, let's just pick a certain kind, let's say a colon cancer. Suppose that medical science comes up with a new treatment for colon cancer. And the question is this new treatment, this new drug, better than the old one? Right? I mean, that's the whole thing. Is this new treatment better than the old one? So how would the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, go about figuring that out? How are they going to do that? In fact, it makes me, given the times with the COVID stuff, it makes me want to do, here, why don't I change that? I'm going to change the story. A new vaccine. Let's change the story. I'm going to make it relevant. Well, I mean, colon cancer is relevant as well. A new vaccine for COVID. Okay. Does this new treatment work? Does this new treatment work? When they're trying to come out with vaccines right now for COVID, how will they know if the vaccine works? What are they? They're not just gonna suddenly give it to everybody in the world, right? What are they gonna do?
They do trials.
Yeah, exactly, right? We all know that, right? they try it out, and maybe suppose they give it to 10 people, and 9 of them, well, they give it to 10 people, then they expose them, they try it out. So 10 people, 10 people receive the vaccine, right? How would this work? 10 people receive the vaccine, then are exposed to COVID, and 9 do not get sick. 1 does. Let's say 1 does get sick. Okay, so should they conclude, therefore, that it's working? I mean, that's 90%, right? That's pretty good. I don't know. Honestly, I'm making up the numbers here. I have no idea what percentage they're looking for and what would be success, but let's just suppose 9 out of 10. So that's pretty successful, right? I guess let's call that success. Pretty successful, right? 9, they gave it the new treatment, the new vaccine to 10 people, right? They receive the vaccine, they give them the vaccine, they give them the shots, then they expose them to the COVID. They have them purposely be exposed to the COVID, and 9 of them do not get sick. 1 does. So 9 out of 10, that's 90%. That's pretty successful. So should they conclude, would they conclude, okay, good, it's working. The FDA says, all right, give it to the whole nation. What might give them pause? Why might they not think they're ready to do that? Why is this maybe not strong enough evidence?
Sample size too small.
Yeah, it's only 10 people, huh? Yeah, it's only 10 people. And so we all sense that, don't we? We all sense, well, if you only did 10 people, what are we meaning? Let me spell out, because you guys are right on. You guys are right on the money. Let me spell out what we're all sensing. It's a small sample. Okay, it's a small sample. Okay, but so what? What if somebody said, so what that it's a small sample? Well, it's possible, maybe, let me just say maybe, because we don't know for sure. Maybe we just got 9 out of 10 people who were not, let me move this down here. We're not going to get COVID anyway, because they have a naturally strong immune system. Maybe, that can happen, right? So down here, there we go. Sorry, I'm kind of scribbling all over the place there. Yeah, so couldn't that be? I mean, isn't that possible? We only grabbed 10 people, and 9 of them, were exposed to COVID and did not get sick. But couldn't it just be that those 9 people just happen to have a naturally strong immune system anyway? Couldn't it be that maybe the vaccine really isn't doing anything, and we only grabbed 10 people, and just 9 out of 10 of them happen to have just a strong immune system, and that's why they didn't get COVID, not because the vaccine was doing anything? Isn't that possible when you only grab 10 people?
I don't think so.
It's not even possible? What's that, Natalia?
Hold on, I'm working through it in my brain.
That's okay. That's good. You might say, well, it's not likely, huh? It's not likely, but it is possible, right? Can we all agree? It's possible. By random luck, you could have gotten 9 out of 10 that just had a really strong immune system, right? Some people do. There are people out there that, they say most of the younger folks have really strong immune systems, and they're fine. They're maybe not going to get it at all, right? And so couldn't it be, that on accident, by kind of random luck, it's possible. Now you might say, well, yeah, but it's not likely, Mr. Heron. Right. Good point. Good. And then that's exactly the good point. Really, we need to consider luck, don't we? That's really kind of the issue. Y'all tracking with me? Is this making sense? You see the problem? Because the FDA wants to be sure, I mean, obviously, I hope they are careful and sure before they give it to the entire nation. They want to be sure. They don't want to go, oh, whoops, sorry, America. We did a study, but you know what? We just happened to get 10 lucky people, and they just had great immune systems. And so we thought the vaccine was working. Whoops, sorry. Turns out it doesn't work at all. And we just happened to get a lucky group. And when we did the test, and shoot, that's too bad. And then we gave it to all of America, and then we let everybody, get exposed, and whoops, sorry. That would be a big mistake. Huge, right? So this statistics stuff here matters a lot, doesn't it? We've got to get this right, don't we? This is big. This affects our life. You see how statistics and the decisions we make based on statistics impact the world medically. They do this in business when they make business decisions. All kinds of, the law, all kinds of criminal justice. They a lot of statistics in that. And there's a lot of areas of life that we all live in, that we experience, that decisions are made based on statistics. Policies are determined. Drugs are used and chosen and implemented, vaccines and things based on statistical evidence. And so that's why this is a great class to take in your college years to get all this stuff straight. So are you with me in the big picture? The problem we're having here is, what about luck? Right? I'm going to write that, because that's the crucial. That's how I like to say it, is what about luck? Or you could say unluckiness. What about luck? What about the fact that you could have just gotten 10 lucky people? Meaning lucky, or I guess it's unlucky, as the case may be, people that had a strong immune system. And so when you thought the vaccine was working, it wasn't really the vaccine. It was just that they had super strong immune system. That could happen, right? It's possible. It maybe not likely, but it's certainly possible that at random that could happen. So how can they fix that? Because that's a possibility and would be a terrible mistake. What do you think the FDA should do, or other people trying to use statistics to make wise decisions about life? What do you think they could do to help this study be more sure? What could we do instead of 10 people?
Have a larger sample size.
Absolutely. Wouldn't that help? That would totally help. So instead of 10 people, what if we did 100 people? What if we did 100 people? So yeah, we don't want to give it to only 10. That you could just get a lucky 10. Let's give it to 100 people. Suppose they give it to 100 people, and let's say 95 out of 100. So that'd be what, 95% success? 95 out of 100 do not get sick. would you believe the vaccine is working then? Personally, I would. Now, what if somebody said, okay, wait a minute though, Mr. Herring, can't you still do this luck thing? Couldn't it just be luck again? Couldn't it be just, yeah, you chose 100 people, but turns out you just got real lucky. 95 out of the 100 people just happened to have a really strong immune system, and that's why they didn't get COVID. It wasn't the vaccine at all. It just you just were like super lucky. 95 out, or unlucky, as the case may be. You just happened to get 95 out of 100 people that had really strong immune systems. That's why they didn't get COVID. The vaccine wasn't doing anything. The FDA thought it was, and then they give it to the nation, and there's a disaster. You think that could happen? I mean, it could happen, of course, but do you think it's likely to get 95 out of 100 by random choice?
No.
Right. And in fact, it's super unlikely, isn't it? It's crazy unlikely. Of course, it's possible. Of course, anything is possible. You could win the lottery tomorrow, right? I don't know. Is there a lottery happening tomorrow? But I don't know about that. But you could win the lottery. But let me tell you, you probably heard the stats. It is super crazy unlikely. You're more likely to be struck by lightning twice or something. You know all those crazy things. Anyway, so yes, anything could happen. Anything could happen. Is it possible to get 95 out of 100 by random unluckiness that just had great immune systems? And yeah, it's possible, but it's very, very unlikely. So I want you to see that at some levels, we're always dealing with uncertainty. That's what statistics is all about. We're never 100% sure, never. But we like to be a high percentage sure. How sure? Well, that's what probability is all about, and that's why we studied probability. And really, let me comfort you about that. The calculator will handle the probabilities for you. You won't need to worry about those. But it is all about probability. It's like, what are the chances that 95 out of 100 people by random selection would happen to be people with super great immune systems? Very, very unlikely. And so what we would say here, it's very unlikely that we got 95 with strong immune systems, right? You can read all that scribbling up there. It's very unlikely that we got 95 strong immune people. Super unlikely, which means it's very likely that the vaccine really did its job and really is working, right? And so there it is. I mean, that's the heartbeat of statistics. You basically try to do enough people or enough experiments to where the chance of luck, because there's always there's always a chance of luckiness or unluckiness, as you want to call it, gets in there. And so what we try to do is make that super, super low by having more and more people in our experiments so that the chance of luck goes really, really, really low and we can believe the results. That's it. That's a hypothesis test. So a hypothesis is an idea. Are you familiar with that? A hypothesis is an idea. So we have an idea that this new vaccine works to keep us healthy so we won't get COVID. But then we test it. We do a hypothesis test. We test out our idea to see if it's got strong statistical evidence. And how do we do it? We give it to a whole bunch of people, and if it works, and we give it to a lot of people, so it's a very low chance that it was just luck. Very, very, very low chance it was just luck. And so at that point, we conclude it's working. The hypothesis is true. The vaccine really works. The evidence is strong. Are we 100% sure? No, we're never 100% sure, but because it could always be luck, but it's very, very unlikely that it was just luck. We conclude there's strong evidence that the vaccine works. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to get into in a minute here. That's what hypothesis tests are all about. They're about testing an idea, testing a new drug, testing a new whatever, a new business model, testing a new law, how it's going to affect society. It's testing out different things to see what their effect will be. And you test it on a sample. You grab 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people and you test it. And then you find the chance of luck, because the fact is something weird and lucky or unlucky could always happen. And you've got to make sure that's not happening, or make sure the chance of that is very, very low. And that's what a hypothesis test is all about. In the end, you're testing the chance that luck got in there. All right, let me give you one more real life comparison, and then we will dive into the details. So, and that is hypothesis test. Hypothesis test is like criminal court of law. What do I mean? I don't know if any of you have served on jury duty. Well, even if you haven't, you've seen how the criminal court works. So when an accused person is assumed what? What do we assume the accused person is in the United States criminal court? Have you heard this statement?
Innocent.
Sorry.
Innocent.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Maybe
The accused person is sued innocent.
There we go. I heard that one. You're probably all saying the same thing. I know my sound's not coming through too well. Yeah, assumed innocent, right? That's our court of law. When that's a good way to go. We assume the person is innocent until what? What's the only time we would abandon that assumption?
They're proven guilty.
Right. So we just keep assuming they're innocent until and if they're proven guilty. Right? That's our court of law. That's excellent. Okay, now, what does it take to prove them guilty? How much evidence? How much evidence does it take? Do you have to have like video camera footage from 4 angles, independent video cameras that have been proven to be held by 4 independent bystanders having nothing to do with the situation, all video cameraing the exact murder, every detail of it, and DNA evidence that is crazy?
No, you just need a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have proven guilty by evidence. How much evidence? Beyond a reasonable doubt. That is huge. That's exactly what we're going to do in hypothesis test. Let me write that a little better there. So I want to fix that in your mind, because that I'm going to keep saying that again and again and again, because that's exactly what we're doing in hypothesis test. We're going to, when a claim is made about a new drug or a new whatever, we are going to assume what's called HO. It's called the null hypothesis. And I'll give you all the details in a minute. But let me just introduce that word right now. HO, that little O is called a null. It's mean like, have you ever heard like your check is null and void? You ever heard that phrase before? Your check is null and void. That means it's zero. It's nothing. So that little h sub zero is called a null. So null hypothesis. So we're gonna assume the null hypothesis, and like in the court of law, you assume innocent, and then the alternative, right? That's this is what excuse me. This is what the defense assumes, right? Let me draw a line here between the two of these. So this side is what the defense tries to prove. They try to prove the person's innocent, and you assume they're right. You assume the defense team is right, but then the prosecutor, the DA, the prosecutor tries to prove guilty, right? The prosecutor tries to prove guilty. The defense tries to prove innocent. They are in conflict with each other, arguing back and forth. Well, that's H1. That's called the alternative hypothesis, H1. So it's HO and H1. They're the two ideas that are in conflict, just like innocent and guilty, the defense attorney and the prosecutor, right? The defense attorney has one hypothesis, that is the person's innocent. That's his idea or her idea. The prosecutor has a different idea. The person is guilty. That's his or her idea. That's a different hypothesis. That's an alternative hypothesis. That's what we're doing in hypothesis tests. We're always going to take something like a new drug and we're going to assume the new drug doesn't work unless what? Unless we have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And when we say beyond a reasonable doubt, you know what we mean? We mean beyond the chance, well, I should say the reasonable chance, of luck. Because the fact is, luck could always get in there, right? You understand why in a court of law they say beyond a reasonable doubt? Why do they use the word reasonable? Why don't they just say evidence beyond a doubt? Why do they say reasonable? What if why don't they just say beyond a doubt? Beyond a doubt. Got to have no doubts. Do you realize you could always doubt? Couldn't you? If you have a murder case and you have 10 eyewitnesses and you have fingerprints and all this kind of stuff, you could say, yeah, I know. If you're on the jury, you could say, yeah, I know, but I think maybe an alien came down and took over his body and controlled his mind and made him do the crime and then left his body. I think that's what happened. So I doubt he's really guilty. Is that possible? I don't think so, but I guess you could doubt that. Do you see the problem? Is that doubt reasonable?
No.
Right. I hope we're all feeling like, no, that's an insane doubt. Right? That person's a little unstable who thinks that way, right? That's not a reasonable doubt. That's not, most people would, I think almost everybody would say that's not reasonable. An alien took over the body of the murderer and no, come on. That's just not reasonable, is it? Right? So do you see why they say reasonable doubt? because you could always doubt, just like there could always be the chance of luck. Like on the example I told you up here with the COVID, right? You could say, well, maybe we just got a lucky 100 people. Okay, I'll do 1,000 people, which is probably what they'll do. 1,000, and we got 950. Well, maybe you just got lucky again, all 950. Well, come on. At some point, it's just not reasonable to think you got 950 lucky people out of 1,000. Come on, that's just not reasonable. Could that happen? Yeah, I guess, but that's just not reasonable, is it? So do you see what I mean? That's exactly how our court system is set up. That you have to present evidence that's strong enough to rule out a reasonable chance of luck, right? If you just say, yeah, we think the person did the crime because, they've never been good friends, and he needed some money, and we don't have any eyewitnesses or anything, but we just think so. Well, yeah, that's not evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. So the jury should stay with innocent, right? If there's not strong evidence, the jury is supposed to stay with innocent. But if there is strong evidence, and what does strong evidence mean? Beyond a reasonable doubt. Meaning, beyond a reasonable chance that it could just be a lucky coincidence. Yeah, the person was at the same place at the same time, but that doesn't mean they did the murder, right? That could just be lucky that they happened to be at the same place at the same time. If you don't have any stronger evidence than that, we could say that's just a lucky coincidence. All right, so do you get the idea? That's what our court of law is all about. Assumed innocent. That's the null hypothesis. We're going to assume the new COVID treatment doesn't work unless there's strong evidence proving it does work beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond a reasonable chance of luck. That's what hypothesis tests are all about. They're about bringing in enough evidence that makes the chance it could have just been luck not reasonable anymore, beyond reasonable doubt. Then, when that's the case, we believe the alternative hypothesis, and we believe the drug is working, for example.